So if you had asked me in 2019, what's the best streaming solution for a church or a local government or a school or a small venue like that, it would not have been any of these because they didn't exist yet. And it inevitably would have been this guy, the SlingStudio. In fact, this is the unit that we used here for a number of years, and I have recommended a number of times to people to purchase. This was my go-to if you can afford it. These were not inexpensive. This is the one I suggested to people to go with. And there's a really good reason why. It's a very slick unit. This is the main base station, and it's got an okay amount of connectors on the back. It's got an HDMI in, which you expect to find, an HDMI out, so you can monitor things, an audio in, USB expansion, things that were quite novel and new at the time, that are fairly commonplace today. But this guy's party trick is that, as you can tell, it doesn't have any user interface on the unit itself. You control it through an iPad or through your computer, and you can do that because this generates its own Wi-Fi signal that those things can connect to. So you can actually have this thing stashed away and then walk around with your iPad controlling your stream from pretty much anywhere you want. And that user interface was incredibly intuitive. I remember one time at a pinch handing it to a 12-year-old, giving them a 3-minute introduction to how to use it, and they successfully streamed an entire service for us. It was that easy to use. You had an optional battery, so it became portable for going out and doing sports out in the world. It's great. And then the other party trick was actually these guys. You'll notice this only has a single HDMI input. Well, that's not particularly helpful. Well, these are the cam links. These are wireless HDMI that are designed, they're battery powered, or you can plug them in, designed to sit on top of your camera. They actually kind of plug into the shoe where you might put a flash or something like that. And then you can stream wirelessly from these to this base station, and you can actually have several of these connected at once. So for things like live sporting events and stuff, you can see how valuable that would be to have everybody spread out. So I said I would have recommended it, and I keep using the past tense words because unfortunately SlingStudio really isn't in existence anymore. To understand why, you have to understand where it came from. Sling is actually a division of Dish Network, the satellite television company. The SlingStudio product was actually a minor product in their larger Sling TV division. And what they were trying to do is perfect this guy, the wireless HDMI technology that lets you connect in real time an HDMI signal from this wirelessly to the base station. At the time, that was a very difficult thing to do without delay. And of course, in live streaming, the one thing you don't want is delay from everything else. So they were taking their technology that they were using to be able to wirelessly beam television to different rooms around your house in their Sling product here and applying it to live streaming. Well, what happened? Well, unfortunately, SlingStudio is a minor project of a smaller division within inside of a large company, and if you haven't noticed, satellite television companies are not doing particularly well right now. So you have not actually been able to buy reliably new Sling hardware for about 2 years. As soon as the pandemic started, all of their existing stock dried up, and they very rarely, if ever, got any more. There's been no updates to the hardware platform. There's been minimal updates to the apps, and the last one, the update was months ago. And so now, if you are a SlingStudio user, some amount of panic probably ought to be setting in, because you have hardware that you're only going to be able to replace on the secondary market. So you're only going to be able to replace with used if something breaks, and inevitably, you know, it's consumer electronics. They only last so long. The batteries inside them only last so long. So that's going to be a problem. We're also going to run into a problem around the control software, right? Apple, it's within the Apple ecosystem. Apple loves to put out iOS updates that break apps that developers then have to fix their apps to adapt to. Well, if they're not actively developing their app, then they're probably not going to be creating those sort of updates that you need in order to keep it going. So you're going to be limited in how many iOS updates you can do to your iPad or OS X updates you can do to your computer. And furthermore, in order to keep those apps in the App Store, Sling has to do something. I'm curious how long they're going to keep doing that and how long it'll be before you can't download the app anymore at all. At which point, if the app doesn't work and the control software doesn't work, it doesn't matter if this works. Nothing's going to work. So if you are a SlingStudio user and you rely on it, especially rely on it for business purposes, you probably ought to be looking at alternative solutions. Thankfully, in the last couple of years, tons of things have come online because when Sling was faltering and kind of falling down and missing a huge market opportunity, other people were taking it up. So I want to talk through the pros and cons of two of probably the most realistic replacements, direct replacements, if you're a SlingStudio user. Now, the first one is obvious, and that is the Blackmagic ATEM line of products. This is actually what we went through here. Not this one. This is the Mini, which is the most basic one. We went to their Extreme, which is the larger one. But they all work about the same and have a similar feature set. If what you liked about Sling was that it was simple to use, then this is probably the most simple to use replacement that there is. Instead of being simple because it's a touchscreen, this is actually simple because it's buttons. And again, remarkably intuitive. You could set somebody down with a couple of minutes of training and they could go through this and learn how to do a basic switch on a live stream fairly easily. You've got good inputs and outputs, up to 4 HDMI inputs, which is the most anybody probably is going to use realistically in a small environment. That's 3 cameras and your presentation computer all in there. It's very compatible. You know, this basic model, which is very inexpensive now, basically you have the USB out, which turns this thing into basically a webcam on your computer. So you can plug your input sources into this. You can plug this into your computer. You can open up YouTube or open up Facebook and hit go live and select this as the input, and away you go. If you're using a restream service like Restream or one of those, you can do pretty much the same thing. You can set this up. You can go. You can funnel into OBS if you want to, and use OBS to put some interesting graphics and things like that on it. And in fact, when these came out, it wasn't uncommon for people to actually pair these with the Sling box as a way of getting additional inputs into Sling and just using Sling to do the streaming and those sorts of things. So these have been paired together for a while, but instead of pairing this with Sling, you could pair it with a computer and get pretty much the same thing. Drawbacks are, of course, this is a wired solution. If you are in a portable environment, you need to be able to distribute your cameras. This is going to be a little harder to figure out. If you're in a large environment, you've got cameras kind of spread all over the place, that's going to introduce some challenges for using this as well. So you do lose that wireless functionality, which is kind of a bummer. You do lose the ability with this one anyway, with the very basic Mini. This does not stream itself. It does need a computer to stream. If you step up to the Pro or the Extreme, those have an input for internet, and those can actually take care of the streaming as well, and you'll get like an on-air button over here. And that's what we do. We allow this to take care of the streaming for us and the recording for us too. This does not record, so you really, if you want a replacement of most of the features of SlingStudio, probably the Pro or the Extreme is the way to go. I actually have a video down in the comments that I'll link to, kind of going over the different versions of this product. The other thing that this thing would do that was a really neat trick was it would actually record multiple streams at once. So you could set it to record not just the program feed, the output that the world is seeing, but also all the individual inputs that were happening at the same time. And what that lets you do is, after the fact, you could load all those up into your editing software, and then you could edit them individually, and then you could go back and basically redo the camera switching in post if you didn't like the way that it came out when you were doing it live. That's kind of a niche feature. Not everybody needs that, but that was a neat feature of that. If you want that, In the mini product, in the ATEM mini product, you need to go with one of the ISOs. So either the Mini Pro ISO or the Extreme ISO, and that's what's going to let you record those multiple inputs at once. Otherwise, you're only going to get a recording of the actual program feed that the world sees. So that's a pretty straightforward, low-cost solution to doing that. The other one is one I just reviewed recently, and that's the new YoloBox. The thing I like about the YoloBox is it's an all-in-one solution like the ATEM. It's got, built-in inputs. This is the Pro model, and so it's got 3 HDMI inputs, a USB input, USB in and out. This will connect to your wireless. It will, the same way that Sling did, it will do your streaming for you out into the world. It'll take care of that. It's battery powered on its own, so it's very portable. And so it really captures a lot of those features that the SlingStudio had, and it comes with its own built-in touchscreen. So instead of being reliant on a tablet to run it, it's all built into here. Now, that comes with its drawbacks too. It's an all-in-one unit, so you're not going to be able to take the iPad to a different part of the room as this unit is and control it. But you do have some portability features here that you otherwise wouldn't have. This product is definitely under active development. It's getting new features all the time. A lot of the stuff that we would have loved to see in Sling are in here, and it's built on the Android operating system, so you can expect to continue to see development. It has every feature that I loved about Sling is in this box. The graphic overlays, the scoreboard, the ability to play media off of an SD card. All of that stuff is in here, and in fact is executed a little bit better. I feel like the YOLO software is what the Sling software would have been had they done a new version of it after the first version that they did. The first version was really good, but I think this is where it would have gone. So I have a whole video also reviewing this, so you can see the bells and whistles of it. But this is another one that if you need this sort of thing, if you want that sort of like the touchscreen and that kind of stuff back, this would be a strong recommend. Retail right now on this guy, the Pro version, is about $1,300. Retail on the ATEM Mini Extreme ISO, which would have all those individual recording functions and all the functions that this one has, is also $1,300, which is not nothing, compared to this. But this thing alone, if you remember, if you bought one, this was $1,000 all by itself and didn't include the iPad, which you then had to buy. So the price point is about the same. Now, there also is a solution for the wireless. If you really are going to miss the cam links, and this was the killer feature for you, there is a way to do it with another kind of additional party product, like this guy, the Hollyland Mars series of products. This is a wireless HDMI solution, incredibly low latency, same or lower latency as the cam links. It comes in a pair, so there's the broadcast pair and then the receiver. And that's sort of the drawback of this versus the Sling. Is Sling, the receiver was built into the main unit, and one of the main units could talk to multiple different cam links. This one is a one-to-one. So you'll need one receiver that has an HDMI out with one sender from each of your cameras. But it is a way to do remote cameras if you need to. So imagine you've got like the YoloBox, mounted on the top of your camera, because you can do that with a very short little HDMI into it from your main camera, and you've got a secondary camera somewhere else. You can use this guy as a way to wireless bring this in. These are battery powered if you want them to be. It's actually, they have external batteries on them, which is actually really nice because you could trade them out if you need to, like mid-production. If your battery happens to die, that's something you can't do on the Sling box. And there are systems you can get that will allow you to mount multiple things like on your camera rig. So you could mount both the YoloBox, and you could mount maybe one or two of these just all on your kind of camera rig. It's going to make it a little big and bulky, but really not really any more big and bulky than this guy was in the first place. So combining something like this, the Hollyland, with either the ATEM Mini or the YOLO Live YoloBox Pro will give you a pretty good direct replacement for what SlingStudio was in a system that is probably going to have a lot more longevity. The ATEM is a product of Blackmagic. Blackmagic's been around for a long time. They're going to be around for a long time. This is a very important product to them. It's not going to be abandoned in the way that the Sling was abandoned by Dish Network. So you have that going for us. YOLO Live also seems to be under very active development as well. They've got several products out and seem very committed to the market. So hopefully there as well, you're not going to run into those same issues of your system that you invested a lot of money in being abandoned. At a minimum, if you're a SlingStudio house, I would scour eBay for a really good quality cam link. These are the things that tend to go bad. First, I would scour eBay and pick up at least one cam link more than you need, so you have it in reserve just in case you get in a pinch someday, because frankly, there isn't any more coming. All right, well, I hope you found this useful. If you are a SlingStudio user and you have other questions about different things how to do things in a different way, or how to replace your system or how to build on your system, leave that note in the comments. Any comments or questions about streaming help me understand what content to put out. There are product links for everything that I showed you in the comments. Clicking those links really does support this channel. It is quite literally why these videos can happen, is the support I get by people clicking those product links when they're going to buy something. And as always, like and subscribe. All right, well, thank you for tuning in, and until we see each other again, have a great day. Hey everybody, if you found that video helpful, please hit like and subscribe, and also check the video description for links to any products you've seen in today's videos. Doing that really helps support this channel. Also, don't forget to leave a comment with any questions that you may have. A lot of the content I do is based directly on the questions and the feedback you give, so keep that coming, and I will keep making them. Thank you.